Hi, I'm Joel Gilgard with Gilgard Analytics. Thank you for tuning into this YouTube video tutorial where we're going to cover global GDP, and this is for 2021. It takes a while before this data is published. It takes much longer and especially since the CIA no longer publishes this data, it's a little bit difficult to obtain. But jumping right in, we look at 61 international country GDP numbers, and we take the 2021 numbers and we compare them to 1988. So this gives us a comparison of the past 34 years. And as always, we both have regular unadjusted numbers, but then we also use the GIAD, which is the Gilgard inflation adjusted dollar methodology for looking at the numbers, which is more accurate. It includes population, GDP, stock market values, gold reserves, corruption ratings. Depending on, we don't have data for all of these, but each year there's a little bit, there tends to be a nuance. So here, for this year, we've included the 2022 Global Corruption Index by country. Denmark, Finland, New Zealand, Norway, Singapore, Sweden, Switzerland are countries with the least corruption. Venezuela, Nigeria, Pakistan, Russia, Egypt, Mexico are the countries that have the most. And then the US, is pretty much in the upper, it's around, has about the same corruption standards as France, Austria, Taiwan, Chile, Israel. And this here is just a quick glance to look at the 2021 GDP per capita, because otherwise, just looking at GDP, the U.S. is the largest, followed by China. But what does it look like for the inhabitants of each country? And you can see here that Luxembourg is a standout with a GDP of approximately $130,000 US dollars per year, followed by Ireland at about 100,000, and Switzerland and Norway at about 90 to 85,000. The US 70,000. So keep in mind, this is GDP. You take the gross national product, domestic product, and you divide it by the number of people living in the country. So if you haven't seen these, but this gives you a fairly good approximation of what the income looks like in each country. And so on the flip side here, you have Kenya, Pakistan, Nigeria, Venezuela, India, probably about 1,000 or so, 2,000 GDP dollars per year. This number is also very interesting. This is using both 2021 data and the 1988 data, where we compare real GDP growth over this period. And as you can see here, China has completely exploded GDP increase per capita. And this is thanks to the lords in the Western world chasing the lowest cost producer, where, and I always thought it was very bizarre that Western companies would just abandon newly constructed factories to move their production to China. But the bean counters must have determined that they would save money by doing it this way. You can also see here, no surprise, former Eastern Bloc countries like Estonia, Poland, Lithuania, they've grown substantially. Likewise, Ireland, and this is due to American corporations which have completely moved to Ireland. The Irish, they put together a tax package which was very favorable for American corporations. Somehow they're still able to do business in the U.S. without paying a penalty tax for that. On the other side, countries which have experienced there isn't a country which hasn't experienced the GDP increase, but very, very low over this 34-year period is Venezuela, Japan, Italy, Jordan, Finland, Argentina, France, Sweden, South Africa, Greece, Cyprus, and so Switzerland even. And you're wondering, how is this possible? And remember, this isn't what they're earning, right? This is what they have grown, how much they have grown vis-a-vis other countries over the past 34 years. You can see the U.S. It hasn't really been growing that much either. So going into the matrix with all the numbers, there are different ways you can look at this. So this corruption index was just something that I added for this year. I just happened to stumble across those numbers. I thought that was kind of fun. But here in 2021, we're looking at GDP and why it's doing this. We're looking at the margins. Okay, so here we have, for example, the U.S. GDP 2021 was 23 trillion. And there's a number that I'm just came to think of right away is that the U.S. now has 33 trillion in debt. That's normally not good. That's normally a number you have during war. You can see here China isn't far behind, but from a population perspective, they are far behind. Third is Japan, Germany, India, UK, France, Italy, Canada, South Korea. I'm wondering if this number is still accurate. Russia, they have probably fallen a lot. This does not reflect, that India surpassed China. That didn't happen until either late 2022 or early 2023. But you can see here, the U.S. is a very large country in terms of population. Maybe not per square foot. So let's just look here. GDP ranking, definitely the U.S. So this is just GDP ranking. Now, if we adjust this for inflation, we'll look here at and we looked at that on these charts. So if you adjust this, going back to $1988, Luxembourg per capita there is 49, followed by Ireland, Switzerland, and the U.S. is about half what the folks in Luxembourg is. Pretty much on par with Sweden, well, I should say Denmark and Singapore. Looking at public debt to GDP, let's just look at which one has the least and the most debt. Japan leads the way per capita. Each citizen in Japan owes a little bit more than $38,000. The U.S. is not far behind, $35,000. Singapore, 35. Canada, Ireland. So that's kind of the detriment of being wealthy is you're given a lot of credit to hang yourself with. Italy as well has a lot of, so if you look at in terms of public debt, this percentage of GDP looks maybe a little bit different. Here you have Venezuela, Japan, Greece, Italy, U.S. These are probably the numbers that you've seen more familiar with from earlier. So here is stock market value, stock market capitalization. U.S. basically trounces everyone, which is a little bit scary, but the U.S. is a country, and it's one of that's the charm of the U.S. It's one of the strengths of the U.S. is there's basically zero history. People live for the newest gadgets that come. The U.S. population is pretty much the beta mode for products that get sold the rest of the world. So the U.S. population is very eager, very willing to accept new products, including all the flaws that they come with, so they can version version 2, version 3 be corrected and exported around the world. And so if we look at the GDP per capita adjusted, you have Japan, and these are the numbers we looked at earlier. And let's look at stock market per capita. There you actually have Hong Kong. And these numbers are going to change now that China's really put their claws into the Hong Kong regime. But you have the Swiss, the US, Singapore, Taiwan. You have Taiwan semi-computer manufacturer. You have Canada, Luxembourg, Netherlands. So all of the wealthy countries, they have a very, very high per capita valuation of the stock. And so this reflects, the value of all the processes, all the knowledge that goes into creating modern day life is the currency of today. Another number here is, what are the total reserves that a country holds? China currently holds the highest, followed by Japan, Switzerland, Hong Kong, and the U.S. Now, if we look at what the total reserves are per capita, it looks a little bit differently. Here you have Switzerland, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, Israel. So these are all countries that are kind of island states. They have none of them have a lot of natural resources, so they have to have reserves in case a war breaks out or other types of crises. Let's just take a peek here where the U.S. would fit in terms of. So the U.S. is the reserve currency of the world. In their opinion, they don't need to keep that much. And so, what is the reserves per GDP? Here you have very, very low for Australia, Canada, UK, etc. Let's see where the U.S. stands here. Looks like it's a little bit higher. I might have just missed the U.S. Let's see here. Again, countries like Hong Kong, Switzerland, Taiwan, smaller countries, countries without as many resources, they tend to have a very high ratio. Let's see if we can find this here. Let's see. Couldn't find it. Okay. This irritates me. Anyway, we will move on. It's there. And then we have the U.S., or we have the stock market to GDP ratio. So let's see here which has the stock the highest to their GDP. Yeah, we have to do it. It's the lowest ranking. So Hong Kong has by far the highest stock market capitalization to the country's GDP, followed by Switzerland, South Africa. So South Africa is because the country is run so poorly. And the U.S. is fifth here. And this just gives you a number, what the GDP was in 1988, what the population was. And so we already looked at the GDP increase. This is the ranking. And let's see which country is increasing the most. So Jordan, Kenya, Nigeria, Pakistan, Egypt. Majority of these are Muslim countries, African countries. Even Luxembourg has increased its population. So, the success of Luxembourg is pulling in some people. It would surprise me if Ireland is here as well. Let's see who is on the flip side, who is not increasing the population. Not surprisingly, these are pretty much exclusively the Eastern former communist Soviet Union bloc countries and Japan. And then you have Portugal, which has been doing poorly. And here you have the Czech, Slovakia, they've been doing a little bit better. Slovenia, Greece, Germany, And that pretty much, folks, wraps up the 2021 Global GDP review. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, but please let me know if you have any questions or any comments. Thank you.